You have been lied to, not directly, not loudly, but subtly through culture, romance, and the fragile narratives designed to keep you compliant. You were told women want kindness, honesty, emotional availability. You were trained to believe that if you become softer, more giving, more transparent, you will be chosen. And yet you have watched the opposite happen. The attentive man is overlooked, the predictable man is forgotten, the available man becomes invisible. This is not coincidence, it is psychology. Machiavelli understood something most men never will. Human attraction does not orbit morality, it orbits power. Not brute force, not cruelty, power of perception, power of uncertainty, power of hierarchy. Women do not respond to comfort, they respond to gravity. Gravity is not loud, it does not beg, it does not chase, it does not explain itself, it pulls. The brutal truth is this: women are not searching for a man who offers himself. They are evaluating a man who cannot be easily possessed. Desire is not born from security, it is born from tension. When you make yourself fully available, fully transparent, fully predictable, you eliminate tension. And when tension dies, attraction suffocates. Machiavelli wrote that it is safer to be feared than loved, if one cannot be both. Most men misunderstand this. They think it means dominance through intimidation. It does not. It means control over perception. When a woman feels she has complete access to you emotionally, mentally, physically, your value collapses. Scarcity is not manipulation. It is psychological law. The mind obsesses over what it cannot fully decode. Mystery is leverage. You see, attraction is not about what you give. It is about what you withhold. Silence speaks louder than confession. Detachment speaks louder than devotion. Self-containment speaks louder than praise. A woman does not test you because she hates you. She tests you because she is measuring your center. Your reaction reveals your hierarchy. If you defend yourself emotionally, you lower your rank. If you chase reassurance, you surrender power. If you over-explain, you expose insecurity. The brutal truth. She wants to feel that you exist independently of her validation, not coldness, not cruelty, autonomy. A man who is emotionally self-sufficient is dangerous, not because he dominates others, but because he cannot be destabilized. And women are drawn to stability that feels unshakable. But here is where most men fail. They try to perform indifference. They mimic detachment, they simulate mystery. Women sense this immediately, because real power is not behavior, it is internal structure. You cannot fake gravity. You either have a life that commands your focus, or you don't. You either value your time more than her attention, or you don't. You either remain composed under pressure, or you fracture. And women are hyper-aware of fractures. Every micro-reaction, every emotional twitch, every moment of insecurity disguised as affection. She is not consciously analyzing you, but her nervous system is. And it is scanning for dominance, not over her, but over yourself. The only thing women want is not love. It is alignment with power, not societal power, not wealth alone, not status alone, psychological power. The man who does not need her, but chooses her. The man whose presence feels grounded, not grasping. The man whose silence carries more weight than another man's declarations. This is uncomfortable, because it means the problem was never what to say. It was who you are when you say nothing, and once you understand that, you begin to see the deeper structure beneath attraction. Because this is not about romance. It is about hierarchy. And in the next layer, we will dismantle the first illusion that keeps men trapped at the bottom of it. 25 Section 2, the illusion of niceness. The first illusion is moral. You were conditioned to believe that goodness earns devotion, that patience secures loyalty, that sacrifice creates attachment. But attraction is not a reward system. It is a hierarchy system. Niceness, when used as strategy, is submission disguised as virtue. A man who is kind because it reflects his internal stability is powerful. A man who is kind because he fears disapproval is weak. Women do not consciously reject nice men. They instinctively reject men who signal lower rank through approval-seeking behavior. There is a difference. When you agree too quickly, you communicate alignment without evaluation. When you compliment excessively, you inflate her position above yours. When you adjust your opinions to maintain harmony, you surrender frame. And frame is everything. Frame is the invisible boundary that defines who leads psychologically. It is the silent declaration, I am centered. I do not orbit you. If you enter her world trying to impress, you have already accepted a subordinate position. Your energy becomes reactive. You respond to her mood shifts. You adjust to her signals. You wait for validation, and she feels it, not intellectually, biologically. A woman's attraction often intensifies when she senses resistance, not hostility, but non-compliance. A man who does not immediately conform creates tension. Tension creates intrigue. Intrigue creates investment. Investment creates desire. But when you remove resistance by being endlessly agreeable, you remove the friction necessary for spark. You become safe. And safety without respect becomes boredom. Here is the dangerous truth: women are not seeking comfort first. They are seeking certainty of your strength. Comfort comes later, after hierarchy is established. If she senses that you are trying to win her approval, the dynamic shifts. She unconsciously steps into evaluator mode. She begins to test. Small delays in response. Subtle emotional fluctuations, contradictions, boundary pushes. Not because she wants chaos, but because she needs confirmation that you are stable under pressure. If you overreact, you fail. If you over-explain, you fail. If you chase clarity, you fail. Every time you respond emotionally to her withdrawal, you signal dependency. Dependency lowers perceived value, and perceived value dictates attraction. This is why the nice guy feels confused. He gives more, he communicates more, he tries harder. And the more he tries, the more she withdraws. Because effort without power feels desperate. Machiavelli understood that humans respect what can walk away. Not because abandonment is cruel, but because the ability to detach signals self-sufficiency. A man who cannot walk away is not choosing her. He is clinging, and clinging suffocates desire. The illusion of niceness keeps men trapped in performance. They believe attraction is earned through compliance. In reality, it is generated through presence. Presence does not beg. Presence does not explain. Presence does not negotiate its worth. It simply exists, solid, unmoved, observant. And when a woman senses that you are not competing for her attention, something shifts. Her perception recalibrates. Your value rises not because you demanded it, but because you did not chase it. But this is only the outer layer, because beneath niceness lies something more fragile, something more dangerous: ego. And once ego enters the dynamic, the real psychological warfare begins. 5e Section 3 Ego. The invisible saboteur. Ego is not confidence. It is fear wearing armor. Most men believe their problem is lack of attraction. It is not. Their problem is fragility disguised as pride. The moment a woman withdraws slightly, replies slower, shows less enthusiasm, shifts her tone, the ego flinches, and that flinch is visible. You may think you hide it. You don't. Ego demands reassurance. Power requires indifference. When your ego is involved, every interaction becomes a referendum on your worth. You interpret her silence as rejection, her independence as threat, her boundaries as challenge. You begin reacting subtly at first. You text more. You explain yourself. You attempt to regain position. And in doing so, you confirm lower status. A man governed by ego cannot maintain hierarchy because he cannot tolerate uncertainty. He needs clarity. He needs affirmation. He needs to feel chosen. But the man who holds power does not require constant confirmation. He assumes value. This is the psychological divide. Women are acutely sensitive to emotional instability, not because they are calculating, but because emotional volatility signals lack of internal leadership. If your state depends on her behavior, you are no longer leading yourself. And if you cannot lead yourself, you cannot lead the dynamic. Ego turns attraction into competition. You begin trying to win arguments, prove dominance, assert superiority. You confuse intensity with strength, but real dominance is silent. It does not argue. It does not rush to defend. It does not react to minor provocations. When she challenges you, and she will, she is not seeking conflict. She is testing composure. If you escalate emotionally, you reveal instability. If you withdraw in wounded silence, you reveal insecurity. If you attempt to overpower her verbally, you reveal fragility. Composure is the weapon. Machiavelli observed that power lies not in force, but in control over perception. If she cannot read your internal state, she cannot destabilize it. And when she cannot destabilize you, she begins to feel your gravity. Ego wants to be understood. Power is comfortable being misinterpreted. This is why mysterious men often command more attention. It is not their silence alone, it is their emotional containment. They are not leaking validation needs. They are not scanning for approval. They are internally anchored. Ego leaks through tone shifts, through excessive humor, through over-investment, through subtle jealousy. And jealousy is the clearest admission of fear. The moment you fear losing her, she feels your dependency. The dynamic tilts. She senses she has leverage, and leverage alters attraction. The man without ego does not fear loss. Not because he lacks desire, but because he lacks desperation. He understands that attachment must be mutual and voluntary. He does not chase equilibrium, he embodies it. But this creates another layer of tension, because when you detach from ego, you confront something even more uncomfortable. Silence. And silence is where most men lose control completely. Fei Section 4, the weapon of silence. Most men are afraid of silence. Not conversational silence, psychological silence. The space where there is no reassurance, no immediate response, no emotional clarity. When a woman pulls back, slightly colder tone, delayed replies, subtle distance, the average man panics internally. He feels the urge to repair the silence. He sends another message, adds another explanation, injects humor, demands clarity disguised as concern. He cannot tolerate the vacuum. But silence is not absence, it is leverage. In any power dynamic, the one who reacts first loses positional strength. The one who fills the silence surrenders frame. Silence forces the other person to confront uncertainty. And uncertainty creates tension. Tension creates psychological investment. When you remain composed in silence, you communicate something dangerous. I am not threatened by distance. This unsettles her. Because if you are not chasing proximity, you must already feel complete. And completeness is rare. Women are deeply attuned to emotional shifts. When they sense that their withdrawal does not destabilize you, curiosity ignites. She begins to wonder. Why is he unaffected? Where is his attention? What anchors him? And attention follows curiosity. But here is the critical distinction: silence must be authentic. If you are silent while internally anxious, it will leak through shorter responses, through passive aggression, through forced indifference. Silence without inner control is punishment. Silence with inner control is dominance. Machiavelli understood that unpredictability strengthens authority. When your reactions cannot be easily forecasted, you become difficult to manipulate. Most men are predictable. They reply quickly. They escalate affection when threatened. They attempt to secure their position through increased effort. Predictability reduces perceived value. Silence disrupts expectation. It resets the dynamic. When you do not immediately respond to emotional fluctuation, you force her to regulate herself. She cannot rely on your reassurance to stabilize her mood. She must confront her own uncertainty. And uncertainty creates desire far more effectively than validation. However, silence has another function. It reveals hierarchy. If she feels compelled to re-engage to fill the gap you left, you regain leverage. If she does not, you gain information. Either way, you remain centered. The man who weaponizes silence does not use it to manipulate. He uses it to observe, to measure, to gather data about investment levels. Because attraction is not about who speaks more, it is about who needs less. And the one who needs less controls the rhythm. But silence alone is not enough. Because eventually, the game shifts from external tension to internal obsession. And that is where the true psychological inversion occurs. Section 5, Obsession and the Scarcity Principle. Desire does not grow in abundance, it grows in restriction. When access is unlimited, attention declines. When presence becomes constant, value erodes. This is not cruelty, it is human wiring. The mind fixates on what feels uncertain. Most men believe consistency builds attraction. It does not. It builds familiarity. And familiarity without hierarchy breeds indifference. Obsession begins where certainty ends. When she cannot fully predict your availability, your mood, your investment, she must allocate mental energy to you. She begins to replay conversations, analyze tone shifts, reconstruct meaning. You become a puzzle, and the human mind is addicted to unresolved puzzles. This is why overexposure kills desire. When you narrate your every thought, Share every plan, respond instantly at all hours. You eliminate mystery. You remove cognitive tension. Scarcity is not about disappearing theatrically. It is about having a life that does not revolve around her. If your schedule bends too easily, she senses low demand. If your attention is always accessible, she senses low competition. If your focus shifts instantly toward her, she senses low hierarchy. Value is measured through perceived demand. Machiavelli understood this in governance. Rulers maintain authority by controlling access. When access becomes casual, respect deteriorates. The same psychology applies here. A man who is selective with time communicates priority structure. A man who abandons commitments for her signals imbalance. And imbalance creates subtle repulsion. Obsession does not form because you give more. It forms because she feels she might lose access. Loss activates survival wiring. The possibility of losing something valuable amplifies its perceived importance. But this must be calibrated. Artificial scarcity, delayed replies with visible online presence, performative aloofness, obvious games erodes trust. Women are perceptive to insincerity. Manufactured distance feels manipulative. True scarcity comes from self-containment. You are present when you choose to be. You withdraw when necessary without emotional drama. You do not announce your absence. You simply have gravity elsewhere. When she senses that your world is expansive, not centered on her approval, she begins investing to secure position within it. Investment precedes attachment, and attachment deepens where effort has been expended. The paradox is severe. The more you chase closeness, the less she values proximity. The more you value your independence, the more she seeks inclusion. But obsession carries risk. If you miscalculate, the dynamic fractures. If scarcity becomes detachment without warmth, she may recalibrate away from you, which leads to the next layer, the fracture of identity. Because when hierarchy shifts too dramatically, someone loses internal stability, and most men are not prepared for what happens when that shift occurs. 5 Section 6 Identity Fracture and the Power Shift. Attraction is not stable, it moves. It recalibrates constantly based on perceived hierarchy. And when that hierarchy shifts, identity fractures. In the beginning, most men enter interactions with subtle insecurity. They try to elevate themselves through performance. They seek validation through attention. They negotiate their worth through effort. But when you internalize scarcity, silence, emotional control, something changes. You stop performing. You stop chasing reassurance. You begin operating from internal authority. And this is where the dynamic destabilizes. Because when a woman senses that she no longer controls the emotional temperature, she experiences uncertainty, not fear, not submission, uncertainty. She may test more aggressively, she may withdraw further, she may attempt to provoke reaction. Why? Because power lost creates anxiety. When she once felt desired and suddenly feels evaluated, her internal balance shifts. She moves from being the chooser to being measured. And most men crumble here. They sense the tension and revert. They soften their boundaries. They reintroduce over-communication. They attempt to calm the disruption. But disruption is necessary. When hierarchy shifts, one identity must collapse. Either you return to approval seeking, or she confronts the possibility that you are not emotionally dependent. If she senses you are prepared to walk away without drama, the dynamic intensifies, because walking away without resentment signals something rare. Self-sufficiency, not coldness, not avoidance, autonomy. Autonomy is threatening to anyone who relies on control. When she realizes your validation is no longer easily accessible, her perception recalibrates. She begins questioning her own position, her own leverage, her own desirability. And when someone questions their position, they invest to stabilize it. This is the inversion. At first, you were seeking certainty from her. Now, she seeks certainty from you. But this moment is dangerous. If you exploit it arrogantly, you lose respect. If you attempt to dominate overtly, you reveal insecurity. Power must remain understated. True dominance is quiet. It does not announce itself. It does not punish. It does not escalate. It simply remains centered while others recalibrate around it. Identity fracture is not about breaking her. It is about stabilizing yourself so completely that external shifts do not alter your internal state. And when that happens, the dynamic changes permanently. But there is a deeper truth beneath all of this, something colder, something that removes the illusion entirely, and once you see it, attraction stops being a mystery and becomes a mirror. 1v5 Section 7, The Uncomfortable Truth. Here is the truth beneath all strategy. Women do not want a man who loves them more. They want a man who loves his position more, not his career alone, not his ambitions in abstraction, his internal position, his standards, his time, his identity. Everything you have heard so far: silence, scarcity, ego control, detachment. They are not techniques. They are consequences. Consequences of a man who is not negotiating his self-worth through external approval. The brutal truth is this: women are not attracted to men. They are attracted to power structures embodied by men. If you remove the structure, if you remove the hierarchy, the boundaries, the emotional containment, attraction dissolves. Because what she wants is not you in isolation. She wants to align upward. Human nature seeks elevation. Alignment with strength increases perceived safety, status, genetic viability, social positioning. This is not romance. It is biology layered with psychology. And here is the part most men resist. If she senses that she is your source of meaning, she cannot see you as above her, and attraction rarely flows downward. This is why obsession begins when you withdraw dependency. This is why tension forms when you are willing to lose. This is why composure under threat creates magnetism, because you are signaling one thing: I exist without you, not as punishment, as fact. The uncomfortable truth is that the only thing women want is to feel that the man they are with cannot be psychologically owned. Owned men are controlled. Controlled men are predictable. Predictable men are safe. Safe men without hierarchy are ignored. But a man who cannot be owned must be respected. Respect precedes desire, and desire sustained requires continuous perception of strength. This does not mean cruelty. It does not mean emotional withdrawal. It does not mean domination theatrics. It means sovereignty, emotional sovereignty. If she leaves, you remain centered. If she tests, you remain composed. If she withdraws, you remain unshaken. If she invests, you accept, but do not collapse into dependency. You are not competing for affection. You are offering access. There is a difference. And once you understand this, you stop fearing loss. You stop fearing silence. You stop fearing her attention shifting elsewhere, because your stability does not move. At that point, attraction becomes a byproduct, not a pursuit. And here is the final inversion. The only thing women want is a man who does not need them to feel powerful. When you internalize that, the entire game dissolves. Not because you have mastered women, but because you have mastered yourself. And a man who has mastered himself is not chasing alignment. He is the alignment.